Nia, how are you?
Hey, Jessica, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. So I am going to pick your brain unmercifully because I'm a huge Candyman fan, and I've been since I read the story The Forbidden, and I saw the original
Mm,
film, and
yeah.
I'm just a massive Candyman fan, and I'm so excited for this. Um, First off, Candyman is like it's a timeless story. It just is a beautiful,
Yeah.
just great story. What was the challenge for you for taking this on and expanding the myth of it?
I think for me, the biggest challenge was having to create something new and different from something that was so iconic and iconic in so many different ways, but also in a completely different system than the original film was made. I saw on Twitter, Bernard Rose mentioned that um, he and his producer were the ones making all the creative decisions. Like, it was not a studio film. It was just like really them taking the story by Clive Barker and creating this new thing. And this movie is more, complicated in terms of like, it's MGM, it's Universal, it's Monkey Paw, and it also is like the collective memory of the original film. So having to create something new that feels true to that original film, but in a very different sort of system and in a different culture, was challenging, more challenging than I thought initially. And something I find really interesting about the movie is how people remember it, actually, because I also grew up with the movie, loved the film. I also love Clive Barker. And so I had all these, I would say all these memories of what the film, how it made me feel. And then I go back and I watch the movie and I was like, oh, this is a tone piece about this woman's marriage. It's like, it's not like like, obviously it's also like a lot about like her being like a white savior, and there's like sort of a white feminism angle as well in the film that I think is really interesting. And it's about trauma, and it's about the black community and who prays in the black community. But it's really not, I think, a horror movie in the traditional sense that we think of today. So I think that was interesting too, to kind of want it to be true to the original tone, and not fall too deeply into like the new sort of 2020 expectations of horror.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things too I wanted to talk to you about, because I've interviewed Tony and I've talked to him about this previously, and during the original production, the studio gave a lot of pushback because they felt uncomfortable about a mixed couple, and there's still footage somewhere out there that was cut because they felt uncomfortable about that angle within the film. Did he talk to you about that at all? And was there anything that happened during this production that kind of, they're like, oh, that's too much, we kind of want you to pull back on that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, the great thing about making this movie with Jordan Peele and Monkey Paw was that they were pretty supportive of what I wanted to do. And also, I think, knowing that in the context of the story we're telling and this very different time, it's not okay to just sugarcoat things or to try to make everyone comfortable. So, there were definitely moments when the studio was like, oh, wait, is that too much? Is that going to be clear? Is that? And it's like, well, in ways this movie isn't for you. So I think that was important to get support about, especially since, everyone at the studio was dealing with is white, and this film is very much about the black experience, black trauma, black horror. So, sometimes it's just, for me, I felt it was just okay to say, it's unfortunate that you don't understand that, but this movie's not for you, incidentally. So yeah, definitely, and I think that's always going to be the case, but I didn't really hear a lot about the original production, actually. So, and I think that was mostly because I really wanted to focus on this movie, and also the movie that is there, especially since Bernard is so clear about it being the movie he wanted to make.
Got it. And so what I've seen from the trailer, because we still don't have a lot. And by the way, I have to tell you this, that the animated trailer that you did, the puppetry one, was absolutely gorgeous and beautiful and haunting.
Thank you.
So well done there, and I love the use of the music. Oh my God, it was so good. And horrifying and sad.
Yeah.
But so perfect piece for Candyman. So there are levels to Candyman, which you've already just spoken about, but within the first film, and also definitely within this one. From the trailers,
Yeah.
it looks like it's not only about the power of names in the past, but also it's a metaphor for taking over, like possession, so, with what gentrification is doing, but also with what it appears Candyman is doing with Yaya's character. Can you talk about what you're representing here and what you wanted to go for within this film?
Oh, for sure. So I think for me the most interesting thing about Candyman, not the most interesting, but one of the very interesting things about him is that it's really about his story. He exists on belief and on the story, and I think a story can take over a place. The story about a place can change how people feel about it, even if the place itself doesn't change. The story about a person, whatever story we decide to tell, changes how we feel about that person, whether or not that story is true. And I think, for me, that's really the way I come into it, especially in terms of possession, thinking of it in a different way. It's more about the stories we tell each other to scare each other or to protect each other or ourselves. So that was a big thing for me with this. It was like trying to take that idea and expand what Bernard and Clive had started and make it something that felt very, very true to now, and also, frankly, to my experience.
Got it. So, and that kind of piggybacking on that, the first film spoke to, as you said, there's not just the fact that you have a woman who's in a relationship that's, that there's one level there. There's Candyman's story as well. Now with everything, I mean, the timeliness of this couldn't be even more appropriate with what's happening in the world right now. Can you talk about how this film speaks to the modern issues of race, they seem to have changed, but they've stayed the same no matter how much we try to change it?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. It hasn't changed, but things are so different, but things also stay the same at the same time. And I think there's even a line in the film where a character says, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And it's just like, we're still dealing with the same foundational systemic issues when it comes to race in this country, and also worldwide, frankly. And I think a movie about a ghost, essentially, and ghosts and the forms they take on in the context of race and the violent history of race in America. I mean, that's really what it's about. So without giving away any plot.
I know, it's hard to do.
I know, I'm like, oh my gosh. But no, I mean, thematically, like, the film is very much taking what Clive Barker and Bernard Rose started and speaking to now. When we released our Shadow Puppetry trailer, which Manual Cinema, they're the company that did the Shadow Puppets, and Robert A. Lowe, my composer, is the one who did the sort of spin on Philip Glass's original score. We really wanted to talk about that. Like, this isn't just the story of one man. It's because it can't be the story of one man, because there's so many more like him. And just because, slavery has been abolished, and even then, we've all seen, hopefully I've seen 13th, like, we know that it actually hasn't completely been abolished, and even if, like, a lynching doesn't look like someone hanging from a tree, even though, again, recently 7 people were found hung from trees, it's like, we still are dealing with the same issues that we need to urgently address. So I wanted to take that and put it into a modern context, and also within the context of, like, another, this world that this first film created.
Gotcha. And so, again, harkening back to the trailer, because I haven't gotten to see anything yet. I'm really, I really want to see this movie. So the first film used a lot of style to convey almost a beehive look to Cabrini Green. But what I've looked at in the trailer, because I've rewatched it a number of times, just looking for things, it really looks like the style you were inspired by there's a lot of like in the art exhibit, there's a lot of white, almost like it's a canvas that's been unpainted. Can you talk about what inspired the look and style of this film, because what I'm seeing is just beautiful, but I'm curious what your take and what you wanted to create style-wise with the film was.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so a big thing visually that I wanted to lean into in the film was repetition, as inspired by like looking at a beehive or looking at the little like a honeycomb or something like that, and also because we're talking about the multiplicity of these experiences, the multiplicity of I guess the multiplicity of these experiences. I wanted to make sure repetition visually was in the film. As for the art in the film, that also was hugely inspired by, again, just like the type of horror we wanted to, have the audience experience. So, so in particular that, sorry, my brain is totally mush.
No, it's okay.
I'm like finishing the movie right now. I'm just like, so in particular with that art opening, first of all the artists were Black. And then, we were very specific about the artists that we chose. So we had one guy named Tubbs who's a kind of calligraphist / graffiti artist, and he's the one who does the writing on the wall. And of course, like, I am the writing on the wall is a huge part of the Candyman lore. There are mirrors involved in it, of course. We have those foil faces by Arnold Kemp, who's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And then we had the Theaster Gates piece of his neon piece. So it all we all wanted to speak to the themes in the film, in that specific instance. And then overall, stylistically, I was really inspired by like horror from the 70s in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Because so much of this film was psychological. So Rosemary's Baby was a big one for me. In terms of how, especially in production design, actually, like how they can take a city like New York and make it feel so much like New York, but all the weird, creepy parts of New York that you don't immediately think about. I thought that was really interesting, and I really wanted to do that for Chicago. And then, I was really influenced by like body horror and The Fly, so that was like something I really wanted to have in the film. I mean, it's really hard to say because there's so much inspiration to try to create something unique. But what I wanted to do was contrast like the horror of what was happening with the beauty of the world. I didn't want it to feel like a canted angle, like deep shadow, like horror film. I wanted it to feel like the real world in which horrifying things are happening.
That's amazing. God, I really want to see it now more. I didn't know how you managed to do that, but you did. So one thing that, of course, is Tony Todd. He has become synonymous with this role as much as, say, Bela Lugosi with Dracula. He is now, that is a legend. He's an icon of horror. Can you talk about the importance of having him involved with this and having his voice be a part of it, and even his face as well within this film?
Well, we really wanted to make sure that we did the right thing in terms of the story, and that was always the focus. I think I talked about this on Twitter recently, where it was like, there's like just telling the best story, and there's also fan service, and sometimes those things aren't mutually exclusive, And as someone who has a very vocal fan of things that some may consider very nerdy, I understand the fervent energy and criticism around decisions made on beloved properties. And so in a way that kind of freed me, because I was like, what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to please everyone, and I know that. But it was very clear from the beginning that Tony was going to be involved in some way. And as the story took shape and there was clarity in that, we figured out the right way. So again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but people hear his voice in the trailer, they see the painting of him in the studio,
Well, I actually got to see the world premiere of Candyman 2, where he came out on stage, and he really did that with his voice, that reverb thing. Mm-hmm. He can do that, and it's
it's crazy.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah, it's okay, well, I'll be your victim. It's all good. Okay, yeah, you got it. All right, here I am.
100%.
So I know I'm about to lose you, but I have one last question about that I really wanted to ask you. As a female director and also as a woman of color, how do you feel to step into the horror genre that and represent the genre in a way that's slowly been growing by it's been growing by leaps and bounds lately for women in front of and behind the camera? And the fact that, you know, it all started with a woman, with Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a lot of people seem to forget that, but I'm just
When she
wanting.
was 18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, and
Yeah.
she went through hell.
Yeah.
Can you talk about for yourself how this is walking into this genre, and you know how great it is to see this and be a part of it?
For myself, my like own internal experience, I haven't really been thinking about it that way. But living in it, like as a Black woman making a studio film, a horror film, you know, there's always going to be the sexist and racist microaggressions, always. And so experiencing that, trying to create a space where that doesn't happen for the next person, like that's very much what I've, dealt with along with making the film. But what I am excited about is I'm excited that someone could see me doing this and be inspired or think that there's actually space for them in this genre at this level. I think that I'm really happy about. But I will say I didn't really think about it while I was doing it so much in those terms, because otherwise I would have been like freaking out. But now, you know, it's really nice that people. I think it's weird to be that person if I am for people, but I'm happy that I can be a positive influence in some way. And I appreciate that people are really taking it and running with it. Like I see a lot of the like Nia directed it, you know, like sort of tweets and stuff, which is really weird to see people like rallying behind me. But it's also nice. I'm like, okay, if this weren't me, I'd also would be like saying, hey, remember it's a Black woman director. Like that's really important. It's just weird when it's directed towards me because that's just me, you know. I'm just like what? But I think it is hugely important.
That's fantastic, and I'm one of those people. I'm like, yeah, hey, by the way, this is hers.
It is so great, but also it's so funny because like Jordan is so adamant about that as well. Like, you know, I didn't fight for a film buy credit on this movie. They just gave it to me. You know, like they are Monkey Paw and Jordan. Like they're very. From the beginning, they were like, let's make sure, you know, Nia doesn't get lost in this. You know, they're great with that. So yeah. So in that way, I felt very supported, and but I appreciate that because I do think it is important.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to sneak in one more question because I have to ask this because Candyman just I can tell from the trailer and from the original films. There's just some amazing visual things that happen in these movies because of the power of the character and just how what he can do and what can be conveyed on film with it. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful horror is what I call it.
Yeah.
Because he's an artist. That's what he does.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you can share that you filmed that is going to is like the thing that's like, yeah, this is going to grab them. This is the thing.
Oh, ooh. Well, you know, I really love our main titles. I will say that. I won't say what they are, but I really like our main titles. And I also honestly like there's more shadow puppetry in the film,
ooh,
and I really think it's beautiful. Yeah, like that piece. We definitely made it specifically for, you know, how we released it, but it was all footage that we already had. So yeah, I think those are going to be really exciting things for people to see.
Amazing. Well, Nia, thank you so much, and thank you for bringing him back. I love this movie. I've loved this character for a very long time, and it means a lot to me and a lot of other people too. So, thank you.
I'm so glad.
And it sounds like he's in very good hands with you. So, thank you.
I hope so. Wait, I think so. But thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a great rest of your day. All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.